Well, Mike, last week's episode was our longest ever.
Yeah, and people still, I guess, they at least downloaded it. I don't know if they actually listened to the whole thing.
Well, we've got a new one for you this week. We're at episode 245.
This one won't be anywhere near as long as last week's,
I don't think so. You're listening to Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. I'm your co-host, Russ.
I'm your co-host, Mike.
And the reason that last episode was so long is because for our final recording, we had our guest, Yakavos Simonitis, join us to talk us through it.
And he had a lot to say, as most guests do. I noticed that, I thought we talked a lot about these albums, but I guess there's more to be said when you have a guest. Those episodes usually go pretty long.
Yeah.
He was really interesting. I like talking to him.
And thanks to Yakavos for sharing the episode on his Facebook pages as well.
Yeah, thanks.
This week, Mike, I did a little bit of experimentation in the streaming world.
Yeah, you were saying. So you were looking at another streaming app. Which one?
Right. Well, we use Deezer as our main streaming. And as I've explained before, the main reason for that is because Deezer was the first CD quality streaming available in Japan. And now there's many other options. Apple finally bumped up their streaming quality. There's Amazon Music, which has gone high res. And the latest contender, which took a while to get to Japan, is Koba's.
Yeah.
And so the reason it took a while to get to Japan, it turns out to be not for a good reason. It is high res, so you can get those high resolution recordings, which sometimes make a difference in classical and jazz too. But the other thing is that they're known for having really good metadata.
Yeah.
Which is a problem for classical music and jazz because streaming was never set up to have more than artist and title with the track. And in classical music, there's so much more you need, right?
Yeah, especially for classical music. Every week I kind of struggle to get either notes for the album or just the CD booklet download or something like that. I'm writing to everybody trying to get that information. You have to know something about the works. And a lot of times we're listening to music that I'm unfamiliar with, especially if it's by a contemporary composer. So you need some background information.
So I downloaded everything, and to my surprise, a lot of the classical and some of the jazz artists and metadata is all in Japanese.
Yeah.
I can read Japanese, but the problem is for our non-Japanese audience out there, Japanese uses Chinese characters kanji, hiragana, which is a phonetic alphabet for native Japanese words, and another phonetic alphabet, katakana, for foreign words.
Which exactly duplicates the other phonetic alphabet. It's really crazy.
The problem becomes that if you're trying to read Russian or German words in Japanese phonetic alphabet, it's not really close to what the original word may be sometimes, and it doesn't really give you a hint for the spelling either.
Right. That's actually the reason why I pronounce certain names the way I do, like the Canadian pianist Marc-Andre Hamelin, they say in America, but in Japan it's written the French way, Hamelin, because he's from Quebec, right? So I still say Hamelin just because I'm so used to that, from seeing it in katakana.
Yeah. So wondering why there was this mixture. I mean, I could see, of course, having Japanese music, J-pop or other things in its native Japanese, but why are all these foreign releases like that? I inquired, and the reason is Koba's took over the E-Onkyo catalog. Onkyo's pretty much defunct now.
That's sad because we used to use Onkyo equipment all the time when I was working in radio, and even in my house I used to have an Onkyo stereo.
And they're coming back this year with some new products, but I think that's probably just in name only.
Right.
I'll have to check it out. Anyway, they've incorporated all of this E-Onkyo metadata, which was specifically made in Japanese. And so I don't think that's going to be very helpful for our purposes.
Right.
Although the album listings do all have a little credit link that you can click on that seems to be in whatever format the album was originally released on. But I was a bit let down. Yeah,
and another issue with these streaming services is what's available on them. And Kobu's is probably pretty good, but Deezer's been very reliable. They seem to have everything I look for on this show anyway, so I haven't really been let down by that, where I'll often have more trouble finding a digital booklet elsewhere than I will finding the album on Deezer.
Right.
They've never let me down that way.
Well, every week I search for all of the links for the most popular streaming services for the albums we feature, so I have my finger on the pulse of what's going on there. I would say Deezer is sometimes a little bit late on recordings compared to Spotify.
Spotify doesn't have high res, though, does it?
Now it's gone up to CD quality.
Oh, they do have that now. Okay.
Spotify has kind of a clunky interface. I find Amazon Music to be the slowest to search, and Apple has the largest gaps. There's some albums that they just never get.
Yeah. They're funny because they're missing a lot of albums,
right.
And yet they have that, I think it's exclusive to them, the Platoon label. It's like a classical label that they run.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know if it's exclusive to them. I shouldn't say that, but yeah, I never really searched for them on Deezer. I kind of saw some of them. I was like, I don't know if I want to, where if I got to get information about this, I'm going to have to contact Apple. I'm not going to do that. I don't think so.
That reminded me of another interesting thing, talking about what we say as metadata or just information.
Yeah.
When you would go to the record stores in Japan, specifically with classical music, although sometimes with jazz, sometimes they would have both the import version and then they would have the Japanese version, like really Deutsche Grammophon. And the Deutsche Grammophon releases for the Japan market were sometimes 30% more expensive.
Yeah.
And that was because all the liner notes and information had been translated into Japanese.
Yeah. So you'd always want the import. You know, it's one of those weird situations where the imported version is cheaper than the domestic version. Yeah. And you didn't want the domestic version if you weren't Japanese anyway, because it's all in Japanese.
Yeah. Anyway, looks like I'll enjoy the rest of my high-res streaming Kobas a month, but I don't think we'll be making the switch from Deezer.
Yeah. All right. So we're still on Deezer, and I'm very happy with them, actually, lately. They've been very good. All
right. Before we get into the new music for this week, let's get to the bad news first. We've got a couple passings in jazz, so I'll get over to the piano here. The first is pianist Richie Bayrock, American jazz pianist and composer, known for his lyrical and harmonically daring style. He kind of crossed over from Bill Evans and modern classical influences, and he died on January 26th in Germany at age 78 after a long illness. He was born in Brooklyn, studied classical piano from childhood, and discovered jazz in his teens. Came up in the 1970s through collaborations with David Liebman in Lookout Farm and Quest, made some recordings on the ECM label, and he worked as a sideman with Stan Getz, Chet Baker, John Abercrombie, Randy Brecker, Jack DeJohnette, and John Schofield, and he had moved to Germany in the 2000s to take a teaching position, and he remained there after his retirement. Up in Canada, Ian McDougall, trombonist, composer, arranger, and educator, and a member of the Order of Canada, passed away on January 26th as well at age 87. He was born in Calgary, raised in Victoria, British Columbia, and he toured Britain with the John Dankworth Band in 1960, and he held lead trombone briefly with Woody Herman's orchestra. He performed with visiting artists at that time, including Ella Fitzgerald, Tony Bennett, Nat King Cole, and Lena Horne when he was in Vancouver. And he played with the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra in the 1960s, and I knew his name because he was lead and featured solo trombonist with the Rob McConnell Boss Brass Band for 20 years, while also serving as lead trombonist and arranger for the Juno Winning Brass Connection. He also taught at the University of Victoria from 1990 to 2003, and his original compositions were performed by ensembles like the Toronto Symphony. So Richie Bayrock and Ian McDougall, rest in peace. As always, in the episode description, you'll find links to Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music for all of the recordings that we'll discuss. And at the top of the description, there's a link to the full episode playlist where you can get all the music in one place on Deezer, CD quality streaming music from France. Now, if you can't see the full description, or if the recording list and links are hard to access wherever you're listening to us now, you can come over to our host site, Podbean, podbean.com. Everything's easy to follow there. If you enjoy the podcast, please follow or subscribe and tell a music-loving friend. If you take a moment to give us a ranking or write a short review, that helps us get listed in the music category recommendations. You can also come and follow us on our Facebook page to get extra info and more releases throughout the week. You can leave a message or comment on Facebook as well, and you can also follow us over on X if you want to catch the new episodes published there. I put them up every week. We're Adult Music Pod over there. And if you'd like to contact us directly with any comments or questions, our email address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, @gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We'll play music samples in this episode as always, and this is our fair use disclaimer. Music sample clips are for commentary and educational purposes. We recommend that listeners listen to the complete recordings, all of which are available on streaming services in the links provided. And we also suggest that if you enjoy the music, you consider purchasing the CDs or high-quality downloads to support the artists. Now, this week, Mike, we've got a real wide collection of instruments.
It's sort of like an instrument comet has struck the Adult Music Podcast, and
it's going to explode in a fireball at the end.
Yeah, sort of fireball of instrumental sounds here.
Yeah.
A lot of variety on this show. And the first one we're going to have is the trombone, classical trombone. It's not an instrument you normally associate with classical music, but there is a repertoire for it. This album is called Mediterranean Melodies, Virtuoso, Sonatas, and Canzonas, circa 1600. So that's our Baroque album of the week.
Right.
And this is by Duo GlossArte, and they are Juan González Martínez on trombone and Leah Suter on what it says here, claviorganum. And basically what it is the harpsichord and the organ.
Yeah.
So he plays both, often on the same track, but not at the same time. This is on the MDG label, that is Musikproduktion Dabringhaus und Grimm from Germany, and released on January 23rd. Really, I haven't been up to date lately with these. I haven't really been going back.
And speaking of Apple Music, this was one that I couldn't find on Apple Music. Maybe it's come out. I'll check again before we put the episode up.
Get with it, Apple Music. What are you doing over there? This is why we don't use you. Okay? Yeah, would have had to scrap this one if we were on Apple Music. Actually, you know what? I'm in touch with Juan González Martínez on email. Maybe he could contact Apple Music and say, hey, where's my album? You know, get it up there.
They're just going to want to sell you a new iPhone.
I guess, yeah. All right, well, I was in touch with Juan González Martínez because I needed a booklet for this because I wanted to know about the trombones that he's using on the album. So he very graciously sent me one. So thank you to Juan González Martínez. And this booklet is worth reading because of the instruments used. And those trombones that are used are really the stars of the recording. There are silver trombones that Pope Leo X, who lived from 1475 to 1521, acquired for his chapel. And they were a status symbol, and the difference was clearly audible, whereas brass had a robust, loud, and brilliant sound. Silver is rather bright, lyrical, and contoured. Contoured is a good word for the sounds we're going to hear on this album. I kind of like that. The purity of its sound is particularly appropriate for sacred places, virtuoso music, and festive occasions. Yeah, that's everything. It's appropriate for all occasions. I can't think of anything else. Okay, Juan González Martínez plays a Baroque trombone based on Drevelovich 1595, made of silver on most tracks, and he's got two other trombones, and I'll indicate what they are when they come up. So this is a silver trombone that he's playing here, and you can see a picture. I guess it's that Drevelovich one on the cover. It's a really beautiful looking instrument. It's kind of got this nice silver gleam to it with sort of like a plate at the bell end. Kind of nice. So check out the album cover. Leah Suter plays an Italian harpsichord, anonymous model from the 17th century, and the organ. That's all they tell us about the organ. It's just an organ. Suter is also a trained organ builder, so she's a woman of many talents. The booklet notes are very informative and are worth having, so buy the CD. Or I guess you could download this somewhere. I couldn't, so maybe you could write to the label and get a booklet. A lot of times they'll let you... you can get a booklet if you actually buy the stream. But if I'm going to buy something, it's going to be a CD. I want the thing, in my house, taking up space. Okay, I'll be quoting from this booklet often when commenting on the tracks. This booklet is filled with informational riches, so thanks again to Juan González Martínez for sending me a digital file. Okay, we start here with Giovanni Battista Fontana, the composer. Sonata Seconda. And this is from his Sonate a 1, 2, 3 per il violino o simile altro strumento. He gave things long titles back then. It was really a description of what was in the booklet, This is from Venice 1641 publication. So this is even before Johann Sebastian Bach was born. Fontana's sonatas were published posthumously in 1641. This is all coming from the booklet. Listen to this. There's a lot of detail here. A full 10 years after he died, Fontana was regarded by his editor as one of the most virtuoso violinists of his time. The collection of sonatas bears the inscription for all kinds of instruments, and Duo GlossArte jump on that opportunity here. Yes, they do. The organ accompanies on this track at the beginning. The trombone is full and present, closely recorded, and the organ has an old church organ sound with the mechanism in the pipes heard opening and closing, a sound that I really love. It sounds kind of intimate to me, you know? It's
Yeah.
Let's listen to this. You'll hear what I mean, and let's just enjoy. This sounds really great. There we are, off to a churchy start. Then in this track, there's a change to the harpsichord. This happens quite a bit on this album, in fact, yeah. And it sounds kind of thin after the organ, but it's a good harpsichord sound, no problem there. The recorded quality is excellent. The trombone's melody is more melodic when the harpsichord comes in, and that's often the case on this album. The harpsichord gets some time in between trombone phrases to melodize, and there's some virtuosic writing for the trombone as well. We'll get to that in future tracks. I'm not going to sample that at the moment. The tracks tend to switch back and forth between mellow conjunct phrasing and more active energetic playing. The organ returns at 2 minutes and 31 seconds, and as I said, this is a great full-sounding recording, which is often the case, by the way, with the MDG label. They have some good engineers over there. We get another switch to the quieter harpsichord at 3 minutes and 54 seconds, and a dancing theme from the trombone at that point. This piece goes back and forth between keyboard instruments numerous times. The organ is back at 4 minutes and 45 seconds for a more somber material. Then at 5 minutes and 48 seconds, the harpsichord and livelier rhythm are back for the last minute of the piece. We move on to track 2, Alessandro Grandi, Deus Canticum Novum, from Motetti a Voce Sola, Venice 1621, very early in the Baroque era. Grandi followed Monteverdi's example in writing in an innovative style. This piece is multifaceted, dramatically narrated work of vocal artistry. The trombone and organ here, we're not going to hear any voices, of course. The trombone will take that melodic line. Both open with a full, powerful sound. The tone on the trombone is especially full. He ends the phrase with a pianissimo, and then the harpsichord is in, and the trombone plays a more flowing melodic line. Now, I haven't sampled the harpsichord yet, although we heard it on track 1, so I'll grab that section here so you can get a listen to that. This piece, like the first one, goes back and forth between harpsichord and organ. Track 3, Francesco Rognoni, Susanna d'Orlando, from his Selva de vari Passaggi, Parte Seconda, Milan, in 1620. This track features a Baroque trombone based on Drevelvech 1595, made of brass this time. This is one of the first documented pieces for trombone and shows how virtuosically it can be used. It's a work of artistic diminutions on Orlando di Lasso's famous chanson Suzanne un jour. These diminutions are what's called alla bastarda. I love Italians have just the best names for things, which is a particular technique of ornamenting transcribed vocal compositions with rapid virtuosic passages over a large range. The piece features a different trombone, and we want to sample this, of course, for its tone. So let's hear this new instrument. okay, no, we're not reaching a cadence there. I just have to get out of that. That's really interesting. It's good for the ear when the cadence is delayed like that, I think. The trombone melody is slow and somber here, shows off some of the instrument's low notes as well. The piece allows the trombone to explore a good deal of its range and features some impressive arpeggiated runs. The organ sticks around for the entire track this time, and I have to say, I'm glad it did, because if every track was going to be organ and then harpsichord, it's going to drive me crazy over the course of the hour. But this duo, varies their approach in each track, and that makes for a good programming and good arranging. The variations tend to alternate between melodic and virtuosic, and there's a nice echo effect by the trombone at the end. Track 4, Giovanni Battista Fontana. We heard him on track 1 as well. This is his Sonata Prima from the same publication, published in Venice in 1641. The opening of this is lyrical with the harpsichord accompanying this time. I like that ending on the higher note there. Yeah, incidentally, I didn't mention the trombone being used, and that means that we're back to the silver 1595 model that I mentioned at the beginning, the Drevelovich one. I like the style of this piece. At the 46-second mark, there's a stylistic change where the melody becomes more recitative-like. The harpsichord introduces a new section at 1 minute and 15 seconds, and at 1 minute and 49 seconds, a 3/4 rhythm starts, giving a rocking feeling to the melody. The rhythm tends to switch between 4 and 3 beats to the bar in alternating sections, and I really like when this happens in Baroque works. This is an attractive work, and the harpsichord plays throughout. Track 5, a familiar name, Girolamo Frescobaldi, one of the great composers of the early Baroque. Partite sopra la monica for harpsichord solo. And this is from his Toccate e partita d'intavolatura di cimbalo, Libro Primo, Rome 1615. So this is the very early days of the Baroque era. Here, Frescobaldi develops a series of variations on a melody known throughout Europe, or at least at the time. The harpsichord plays a theme at the beginning, and this is attractive right away. We'll come out of it there, and then the variations start up, and they go on for quite a while, Frescobaldi being a very inventive composer. Again, this is good programming. The trombone can get wearing on the ear, although I'm sure that Juan Gonzalez Martinez won't agree. We get a break from it here, though, so a little... the variations that Frescobaldi come up with for the tune are all attractive, as well as that theme. I found myself engaged for the entire 7 minutes of this work. Great clear sound on Alea Suter's beautiful sounding harpsichord, as well as excellent pacing and touch by Suter herself. This is a really good performance. Track 6, Francisco Correa de Araujo, I guess, Spanish composer, 1584 to 1654, Todo el Mundo en General, from Facultad Orgánica, published Alcalá de Henares, 1629. Now, on this piece, we're hearing a Renaissance trombone made of silver based on Schnitzer, 1551. So it's earlier than the other two trombones that we heard. And this is the third and final trombone we'll hear on the album. This is the first time we're hearing it. Arranged for organ and trombone here, and also the harpsichord comes in as well. In Seville, the fast version would be sung on the street, while in church the same music is intoned reverently at half the tempo. The work is interesting in rhythm and melody. The piece starts melodically with straightforwardly accompanying organ chords. It's overall a placid sound. The trombone tone here is smooth and well-rounded, with a bit of a burnished quality to the tone. The high notes at 1 minute and 10 seconds draw attention, but are rather subtle. I'm going to do a long sample here, so let's hear a bit of this. Okay, so we heard both the organ and the harpsichord, both the churchy and the secular version of that melody. At 1 minute and 46 seconds, the harpsichord is in with the quicker tempo that we heard there and the dancing line. And here the trombone plays out in that same burnished tone. The rhythm sounds Italian in its sunniness when the harpsichord comes in. And then at the 3 minute and 32 second mark, the trombone gets some faster lines in the organ-accompanied context. There's one more dancing theme in the harpsichord at around the 4 minute and 5 second mark. And here the trombone has some quick, virtuosic lines. The harpsichord plays in its higher range just before the end. Track 7, Bartolomé de Selma y Salaverde. He was Spanish, and this piece is called Canzon Prima, from Primo Libro de Canzoni, Fantasia e Correnti, Venice, 1638. Bartolomé was celebrated as a virtuoso bassoonist. His works have dance-like episodes and melodic twists, reminiscent of Spanish folklore and its Moorish roots. The harpsichord accompanies here. The work itself is melodic, and González Martínez navigates this light-sounding line remarkably well with his heavier-toned instrument. The organ comes in past the 1 minute and 30 second mark and plays somber chords as the trombone remains fairly agile. The harpsichord is back at 2 minutes and 13 seconds to lighten the texture and give the trombone more room for virtuosic figures. Let's sample that part. And we'll come out of it there. Got a lot more samples to go. I'm doing a lot of samples on this album simply because each track is so different than the others. I want us to hear all the different sounds that we're hearing on this record. Track 8, a composer that I really love, Giovanni de Mac. Not a very well-known one, but he did a lot of great harpsichord works in the early Baroque era. He's one of the original Baroque composers. This is his Capriccio sopra re fa mi sol, and this appears in manuscript, and it's for harpsichord solo. A short musical motif is developed in counterpoint, and this starts with chords in typical Giovanni de Mac fashion. I like his way with block chords. There's a real particular quality to his music. Gentle figures emerge from chords by the 30-second mark, but let's hear the opening. I love the way those lines just spill into these new key areas. And even those opening chords, there's something really brazen and kind of outspoken about them. I really like his music a lot. Anyway, a new section starts at 1 minute and 4 seconds, and it's got more of a melody accompanied by cascading arpeggios. The piece, in fact, unfolds as a series of variations, each a contrast to the previous one. Tomasz is an inventive composer, and this keeps the listener attentive, not least for the sensitive playing of Lea Suter here. She gets a clean tone at a distance that renders the harpsichord at its proper quiet volume on the recording, yet close enough for the individual tones to register clearly. So again, the engineers have done this well, and she has a very clean sound herself, so this is really a team effort here. Melodic figures are all cleanly executed, and I enjoyed this piece a lot. It's beautifully shaped by Lea Suter. Track 9, Giovanni Martino Cesare, Canzone La Hieronima from Musicali Melodie, Munich 1621. This was written for court entertainment in Munich. It combines vocal motifs with instrumental virtuosity, along with Susanna d'Orlando by Francesco Rognoni, which we heard earlier. This is one of the earliest surviving works to explicitly feature the trombone. The organ with its mechanical pipes opens the piece with fluty sounds, and the trombone starts with a melody. I want to sample some of González Martínez's more virtuosic lines here. So let's hear some from around the 1 minute and 40 second mark. Track 10, Bartolomé de Selma y Salaverde again, Canzone Terza from Primo Libro de Canzoni, Fantasie e Correnti, Venice 1638. The work has a somber opening with the organ accompanying with chords. The trombone ends the section with some virtuosic figures, then the harpsichord is in at around the 1 minute mark for the next section. So we're going to hear organ and harpsichord both on this track. The trombone plays more virtuosic lines in the harpsichord-accompanied sections, while González Martínez has more of a veiled tone when the organ comes in. He sounds reverent in these sections with the organ, and the harpsichord is in to accent the sections with livelier rhythms, such as that we're going to hear right here at 3 minutes and 15 seconds into the track. Okay, we'll go out on that reverent sound. Sections are shorter in the end, with the organ and harpsichord varying between them. González Martínez gets an attractive natural trill at around the 3 minute and 50 second mark, which sounds like it's played more with the breath than with the slide, although I guess the slide's got to be involved there. Track 11, Francesco Rognoni, Pulcra es amica mea, from Selva de vari passaggi, parte seconda, Milan, 1620. This is the Renaissance trombone made of silver, again based on Schnitzer 1551. The work is composed on a work of Palestrina's and displays the trombone's vocal possibilities. We hear the Renaissance trombone for the second and final time on the album. The organ accompanies. I want to sample this instrument when it's displaying some agility, and while there are no virtuosic sections in this work, or no sit up and take notice ones anyway, there are some faster lines in the trombone. I guess you'd consider this virtuosic. Let's hear it. The organ accompanies with a church-like calmness throughout. The piece ends, surprisingly, on an unresolved harmony. Track 12, Dario Castello, Sonata Prima, from Sonate Concertate in Stile Moderno, Libro Secondo, Venice 1629. This has the Baroque trombone, based on Drevelvech 1595, made of brass. Castello was leader of the town pipers in Venice. In his sonatas, he combined the pipers' special tradition of multiple choirs with the Stile Moderno in his rich and emotionally charged sonatas of 1629. This starts with the harpsichord playing a set of rolled chords. The Baroque trombone made of brass is back for its final track, so let's hear it one last time. Yeah, some nice playing there from González Martínez. Really agile on that instrument. There are subtle changes to how the theme is played with each iteration, with González Martínez showing a lot of variety in his approach. Great tone on the instrument, too. Sorry to see it go on this recording. I like the way González Martínez adapts to the character of each variation on the theme. The piece ends on an open-ended, unresolved harmony. And then we get to track 13, Michelangelo Rossi, Toccata Settima. This is for harpsichord solo. It's from his Toccate e correnti d'intavolatura d'organo e cimbalo, published in Rome, 1634. Rossi goes beyond the boundary of variations on a melody here. The work is a free fantasy full of chromaticism, surprising harmonies, and dramatic changes of mood. The work looks ahead into the future. The harpsichord opens with broken chords spaced wide apart. This work is meditative in the opening, and then at the 30-second mark it falls into quicker figuration and a harmonic change slams on the brakes, leading to a new harmonized line. Yeah, a lot of exotic spices in the harmony of that piece, if you're listening closely. I'm sure we all heard the odd harmony that just stopped the rhythm in its tracks about 10 seconds into the sample. Great piece by Michelangelo Rossi here, and great playing by Lea Suter as well. Track 14 is the final track on the album. Dario Castello is back, Sonata Seconda, from Sonate Concertate in Stile Moderno, Libro Secondo, in Venice 1629. The organ opens the track and has a light dancing quality, which has really not been the case for the organ on this album. The trombone comes in with a heavy tone, particularly after all of the solo harpsichord we've just heard. The organ provides a bed for the trombone's figuration after the 30-second mark. The trombone gets a lyrical melody at about the 1-minute mark, then a bouncier melody follows with repeated notes on the trombone, and the harpsichord steps in here. The organ returns at the 2-minute mark with the trombone playing a theme that jumps into figuration pretty quickly. I like the effect of the trombone's pulsing repeated notes at 2 minutes and 55 seconds, so I want to sample that. The harpsichord is in for the next section, as you heard, which has the trombone playing figuration, and then the organ returns, holding a chord as a pedal point as the trombone plays above it, finally landing on a tonic and ending the piece and the album. This album of Baroque music from the Mediterranean really is something unique, particularly because of the strong presence the trombone asserts as a solo instrument. Juan González Martínez uses 3 period trombones on the album and plays them with idiomatic character, as though he just stepped out of the 17th century to serenade us. He gets a strong, solid tone that's pleasing to the ears and has the virtuosity to make the more dynamic sections of these works come alive. Lea Suter is equally good on organ and harpsichord, though I found myself favoring the sound and lively rhythms given to the harpsichord. The very light percussiveness of the album gives the rhythm a bounce. I would have preferred that Lea Suter stayed on one instrument for the entirety of a given piece more often, but that's okay, that's their aesthetic here. The timbral change between harpsichord and organ is pretty extreme, though that is, as I said, duo GlossArte's aesthetic. And the occasions on which the organ changes to the harpsichord and vice versa are chosen judiciously. The sound quality of the recording, as is so often the case with MDG releases, is outstanding, with the ringing quality of the trombone seeming to enter the room through the speaker. The engineer isn't mentioned in the notes, but the producer is listed as Holger Schlegel, with Produktion, which I guess could be the engineer, by Werner Dabringhaus, so I guess he's one of the label people. I guess he would be the Manfred Eicher of Dabringhaus and Grimm. I would have liked the booklet to feature photos of the 3 trombones used on the album. We do get a beautiful close-up of the bell of the silver trombone on the album cover, and we can see a rather ordinary-looking brass trombone used by González Martínez in the artist photos, but it would have been great to see all 3 instruments in full in photos.
As a trumpet player, I've been interested in historical works for early trumpet, but this was the first time listening to a collection for trombone. It was interesting, especially to consider works written specifically for the trombone in the 1620s, like the Cesare work. I was surprised at how virtuosic the parts are throughout the program, and Juan González Martínez handles them with great skill and expression. The trombone instruments here have a unique tone. My understanding is that as the trombone developed over the centuries, both the bore size and the bell flare expanded. You can see the small bell relative to today's trombones on the album cover, as you pointed out. Despite the size, the instruments have a rather warm sound. Also, Lea Suter on the organ and harpsichord gives fine performances on the recording. It's an insightful program of music for the early days of the trombone, an instrument that we can always hear more of. And if I had known you were going to choose this one for the episode in advance, I would have probably picked the new Michael Deese Trombone Ensemble album, and we could have had a bone blowout episode covering 400 years of the instrument. But
and we could have had a great episode title as well, with
another
bone
episode,
blowout there. We haven't used that one yet. All right, there's a new Michael Deese, huh?
Yeah.
Boy. Okay. I'm looking forward to hearing that. All right, but next we have a bassoon album. This is the Bassoonist's Songbook, and the bassoonist in question is Avie Harman. She's accompanied by Tom Poster on the piano, and this is on the Chandos label, released on January 23rd. Both Avie Harman and Tom Poster are members of the chamber music collective Kaleidoscope, who we featured twice on Adult Music, once on episode 27, Almost All American, on September 13th, 2021. Do you remember 2021? I don't think we were working then.
Yeah.
Because I think we had to stay home because of the pandemic then.
Right.
And we discussed their album American Quintets at that time, hence the title Almost All American. And again, on episode 169, we talked about their album Brahms and Contemporaries Volume 1. That episode title was Boss Baritones and Prepared Pianists. One of our better titles, I think. Yeah, June 17th, 2024. By the way, Volume 2 of Brahms and Contemporaries was released in May 2025. The booklet starts with a quote by Frank Zappa. Some people crave baseball. I find this unfathomable, but I can easily understand why a person could get excited about playing a bassoon. And I sympathize with Frank Zappa's quote here. I understand how people can get excited about a lot of things, really, because I'm excited by a lot of things that people think I'm strange for.
Really?
One of them is talking about classical music on a podcast, but I like baseball enough, though. But I think, yeah, Russ and I both relate to the bassoon, and that's why I was thrilled to see this rather unusual release. Amy Harman says the album is a showcase of the side of the bassoon that she loves the most. So let's check that out. We start the album with a work by Clara Schumann, Ich stand in Dunkeln Träumen, Opus 13, number 1, composed 1840 to 1843. I guess that's all of the Opus 13 works. This was written in E-flat major, adapted for bassoon and piano in F major. And the adaptation was made by Amy Harman. This starts with a simple song-like piano accompaniment. You expect a voice to come in, and though I know I'm listening to a bassoon album, the entire timbre of the bassoon surprised me here, because I was just waiting for the voice. I guess I'm so used to these songs just coming in with a voice. Anyway, let's hear it. And one thing you'll notice right away is that Amy Harman really likes the melodic, lyrical side of the bassoon, because a lot of these works on this album are going to be very...
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, lyrical sounding. The bassoon plays the melody with a sensitive, though wide-sounding tone. The phrasing is taken sensitively here. Tom Poster's accompaniment is sensitive too, and that's really the word to describe this entire work. Track 2, Clara Schumann, Ist gekommen, Opus 12, number 1, from 1841. This is in F minor, and it's also Opus 37, number 2, by Robert Schumann. It wound up in both of their published works somehow. This is adapted for bassoon and piano by Amy Harman, and the piano creates a bit of a storm here, which the bassoon melodizes over, picking the melody out of the piano's line. Harman plays melodically here and goes for a rougher sounding tone at times for expression. I like the sounds this instrument makes. There's an appealing tension build-up starting at around the 1 minute and 30-second mark that tapers off as the bassoon moves into its gentler, higher range with a sudden dip to pianissimo playing. Now we've got, I think, 19 tracks on this album, so I'm going to be more judicious with my samples here. I'm going to skip this one. There are actually 20 tracks, sorry. Track 3 is another work by Clara Schumann, Liebst du Schönheit, Opus 12, number 2, from 1841, in D-flat major, adapted for bassoon and piano in F major, and this is adapted by Amy Harman. The poem by Friedrich Rückert that gives this piece its name was most famously set by Gustav Mahler. I know that. I have that particular one in my head all the time. The piano accompaniment here is pretty straightforward. The bassoon gets the gentle melody, but I've got to say, here I'm missing the words, because I know them. You know, I'm kind of like singing them in my head, and because of that Mahler piece. It's kind of odd to hear this without the words. The piece stands well on its own, though. It's really very musical. It's just that I know how beautiful the poem is and would love to hear it sung. The bassoon is in its throaty-sounding lower mid-range for a lot of the work, reaching higher for certain more tender moments. Tracks 4 through 6, Camille Saint-Saëns, Sonata in G major for bassoon with piano accompaniment, Opus 168, composed in 1921, which was the year of Saint-Saëns' death, so this is a very late work by Saint-Saëns. It was among his last completed works, in fact, one of a group of 3 sonatas, and the others were for oboe and clarinet, so if they're anything like this, I'd like to hear all 3 of them, because this was a real find, I thought. Track 4 is the first movement, Allegro Moderato, and this has like a sprinkled out piano opening with the bassoon unexpectedly coming in softly over it, without much of a setup. It's an interesting sound all the way through. Saint-Saëns really sets the bassoon well in that piano texture. The movement is fairly short, at just about 3 minutes. We probably don't hear it much because it requires a bassoon, but we should hear this piece more. Yeah. It's a really interesting movement, not least because of the bassoon timbre with this melody. The work, brief as it is, lets us hear the whole range of the bassoon, ending on an appealing high note. Track 5 is the second movement, Allegro scherzando, and this goes more for the burbling, comic side of the bassoon, and the rhythm is a bit like Paul Dukas' L'Apprenti Sorcier, or The Sorcerer's Apprentice. Those of you who have seen the Disney film Fantasia know this is the section with Mickey Mouse as the wizard's apprentice. Let's hear the opening of this, and see if you can pull out that element. Yeah, I had to let that go so that we could hear those low, reedy tones that we love so much from the bassoon and really any reed instrument. The movement spends a bit of time on the reedy low end of the instrument. In fact, there's a fantastic run to a low note at the 1 and 5 second mark, so that's coming up. We didn't get to that. That made the chest cavity momentarily vibrate, a feeling that I love. And at 1 minute and 30 seconds, a more lyrical middle section begins. I have to tell you, it's great to have a subwoofer if you like that chest cavity sound. Sometimes you just get that pleasure. This movement is ABA, and we hear the opening theme come back with a coda attached and a reach for the high end of the bassoon as well, so we get the whole range in really both of these movements. Track 6 is the third and final movement of Camille Saint-Saëns' work, Molto Adagio Allegro Moderato. The piece starts with sparse accompaniment, and the bassoon is in with a shyly singing melody, playing softly. The melody's well shaped by Harman here. The melody itself is a bit haunting and immediately appealing. At 1 minute and 35 seconds, the piano moves into its high range and plays a slow arpeggiated figure over which the bassoon continues and eventually moves down into its very low, reedy sounding range. There's a lot of varied expression from the oboe, including twisting figuration and staccato. The bassoon writing and consequent playing is fantastic in this movement, and I'd urge you to hear it in full. There's another spectacular bass note at around the 5 minute and 20 second mark, and then the music bursts into celebration to end the work. This is a really great piece. Everybody, just go hear all three movements. It's really something. Track 7 to 9, Robert Schumann, Drei Romanzen, Opus 94 from 1849. This is for oboe ad libitum, violin or clarinet with piano accompaniment, and here it's performed, of course, with the bassoon. To play this, Harman had to transpose the original score for the oboe down an octave, so we're hearing pretty much the same work, except down an octave. Track 7 is the first movement, Nicht schnell, or not fast. This is in A minor. The piece has a dark hue to it, and we hear the bassoon in a more lamenting style here. The piano does step out at times with thematic lines, but the piece belongs mostly to the solo instrument. The piano sets a more emphatic rhythm at 1 minute and 34 seconds, making the bassoon step out a bit in its high end for expression. The instrument laments up in its higher range for a while and ends around there. Track 8, the second movement, Einfach innig, moving to Etwas lebhafter in A major. This is a more generous, romantic-sounding melody. The theme sounds open-hearted, and I'm going to sample this one. middle section gets stormier, with the bassoon playing a surging line, moving higher in its range while the piano pushes with stormy patterns. It's all nicely judged without losing control. There's enough to put feeling across without making the piece sound wild. The movement ends quietly. Track 9, the third movement, also marked nicht schnell, and then there's a coda im tempo, and this is all in A minor. This has a darker sound to it as well, so we had that brighter middle movement sandwiched by two dark-sounding minor movements. The bassoon does minor keys well, the sound matching the mood perfectly. By the 30-second mark, the work has snapped out of its lethargy and gotten livelier, but then dips back down to that opening mood. The livelier mood returns momentarily, and then the piano is off in a more poetic direction, inviting the bassoon in afterwards. This acts as a B section, after which the opening theme, followed by a livelier rhythm, returns. A brief lyrical coda ends the work. Tracks 10 through 13, the centerpiece of the program, Johann Sebastian Bach, Sonata No. 2 in D major for viola da gamba and harpsichord, BWV 1028, and this is adapted for bassoon and piano by Amy Harman. Harman was a first-study cellist before she switched to bassoon, so her interest in this work shouldn't be surprising. It's programmed to act as the program's centerpiece, as I said. It's a four-movement work. The first movement is Adagio. This is track 10. And it's got an interesting overall sound, not just with the bassoon, but with the piano accompanying as well. The theme comes across lyrically with some very deliberate phrasing choices by Harman to make Bach's continuing melody fall into phrases. She makes very musical choices, to be sure. Track 11, the second movement, Allegro. This opens with a lot of sound from the very busy piano combined with the bassoon's wide tone. The bassoon sounds agile here given the speed, and I wonder how a viola da gamba would sound at this tempo. Agility is the key word here, as Harman is given immensely long phrases, which again she judiciously breaks down into breathable phrases. She doesn't circular breathe, by the way. She feels that pauses for breath bring out the musicality of the line. Quite frankly, I like the pauses and the non-circular breathing used here. It makes the music sound more human. The musical texture lightens as it goes, with the piano favoring its higher end, allowing the bassoon to register fully. There are occasional bass phrases on the piano too, as we expect from Bach. Track 13, third movement, Andante. The bassoon starts in its lower register, with the piano gently playing a creeping line at first, then adding counter melody to the bassoon's attractive line. Tom Poster balances his bass phrases and right-hand accompaniment in a deeply satisfying way, playing lightly enough for the bassoon to be front and center here. Harman is playing throughout this 4-minute movement, so some appreciative points are given for her lung stamina as well. Track 13 is the fourth and final movement, Allegro. A cheerful, chirpy final movement. Let's sample the beginning. The piano plays clean, shrilling figures along with the bassoon's equally dancing staccato rhythm. The melody once again keeps going on the bassoon throughout this 4+ minute movement, so again, very impressive playing from Harman. When Tom Poster gets his moments in the spotlight, he plays with great clarity and balance between voices. This entire work comes across well here. Tracks 14 through 18, Samuel Coleridge Taylor, 5 Fairy Ballads. Composed in 1909, this is for voice and piano and performed with bassoon here, and there's no adaptation. Track 14 is the first movement, Sweet Baby Butterfly, Allegro Moderato, in A-flat major. The piano provides a rocking movement with a ripple in it as the bassoon plays the highly song-like melody. Again, I suspect we're missing something by not knowing the words, but the melody is attractive and attractively played here. The work ends on an attractively taken high note. I should also mention that the Kaleidoscope Chamber Collective did a whole album of Samuel Coleridge Taylor works that is worth checking out, so they've found this one for this album too. Track 15 is the second movement, Alone with Mother, Andantino. This is in E-flat major. Amy Harman highlighted this work in her booklet note, saying it's a personal favorite in this set, so let's hear a little bit of her playing on this. There's a bit of bluesiness in the melody and accompaniment. It's a soothing, comfort-giving work, and this ends with an attractive piano flourish. Track 16, the third movement, Big Lady Moon, Allegretto. This is in F major. The opening piano line is florid, and the bass comes in its lower end, playing some blue notes in the melody. I haven't sampled the bassoon there yet, so let's sample this. Track 17, fourth movement, The Stars, Allegretto to Allegro. This is in E minor and G major. Coleridge Taylor favors the open fifth bass chord. It's heard here again with a repeating circling melody in the bassoon, some of which the piano takes up in accompaniment. The middle section at 50 seconds is pretty, with rolled chords on the piano and a gentle nostalgic sounding melody in the bassoon, with a bit of folk-like blue notes in it as well. The entire fast-slow structure repeats, and the piece ends. Track 18, the fifth and final movement, Fairy Roses, A-flat major and C major. The piano plays a light, fleetly sounding accompaniment as the bassoon plays a theme over it. Once the piece changes to a waltz, it gets even more attractive melodically, with Tom Poster keeping the rhythm moving under the melody. Once again, this entire structure repeats, and the piece comes to an end. Track 19, a work by Henri Dutilleux, Sarabande et Cortège from 1942 for bassoon and piano. This work is a challenge for the bassoon and was written to be that way. The bassoon starts off accompanied by a creeping piano line, playing melodically, with the tone given lots of space. This is the Sarabande section of the piece. There's a speeding up of tempo at around the 1 minute and 25 second mark, and the phrase here ends on a spectacularly low bass note on the bassoon at 1 minute and 40 seconds. We've heard those low bass notes a few times on the album, and I'd like to sample that moment here. May as well go out there. Great sound there. I should mention this piece was written for a bassoon student competition at the Paris Conservatoire for the 1942 competition. A new slow section begins after this point, and at the 3-minute and 2-second mark, there's a pause, and the cortege section begins. It has a walking sort of figure, and is a bit on the grotesque side, a contrast to the more attractive opening. Here, the bassoon is given naughty figures to play, and needless to say, Amy Harman dispatches them with ease, and with their expressive character intact. A more modal section comes in at around the 5-minute mark, and the bassoon gets a bit of a cadenza at the very end, playing solo, a section that moves the instrument through its entire range and ends on a high note. The piece ends on a trill on the bassoon, followed by a quick, agile figure. And track 20, we end the album with Jerome Kern's All the Things You Are, written in 1939, for the musical Very Warm for May, which I've never heard of, but I know the song well. This is arranged for bassoon and piano by Tom Poster. Warm color chords by Tom Poster set the mood for the melody, and Amy Harman plays it with all of the emotion that you know she feels about it. The constant changing key after phrases makes this an attractive song. The entire piece ends on a high note for the bassoon, followed by a piano flourish in the high end, an appealing way to end the album. This is a record that may make you rethink the bassoon. It's often seen as a comic character in the wind section due to its ability to play plodding staccato lines, but the bassoon in Amy Harman's hands is made to be an attractively melodic instrument. She's got an appealing, full, wide tone on the instrument throughout and plays with an inviting sense of phrasing, particularly noteworthy in the Bach Viola da Gamba Sonata. She has an ideal partner in Tom Poster, who excels in setting the ideal mood for each piece and plays with clarity and a lightness of touch that allows the bassoon to register fully. The program itself is full of variety, covering many eras of music. This is an album that can appeal to anyone with its frequently gorgeous melodies, but bassoonists should absolutely hear it to understand what their instrument is capable of outside of the orchestra.
My comments are similar to yours. As Amy Harman mentions in the booklet notes, the bassoon is sometimes relegated to comic relief in orchestral music sections. Sometimes it's also used for more ominous sounds, like the bass clarinet is as well. However, Harman shows here that the bassoon can be as lyrical as any other wind instrument. The program focuses on material that gives the instrument a chance to sing out, often in its higher register. The Saint-Saëns and Dutilleux works were written specifically for the instrument, and they're a highlight, bringing the French sense of sensitivity to timbre. The Schumann Romanzen, originally for oboe, sounds really fine, an octave down on the bassoon as well. Bach is here too, and the Coleridge-Taylor melodies were sometimes folky or dreamy. Skillful and enjoyable playing with a great sense of phrasing by Harman throughout, and Tom Poster is a great accompanist, not calling a lot of attention to himself, but always sounding assured and solid in the piano parts. And I think after this we can just say, more bassoon. Yeah,
let's do that. By the way, Tom Poster, every album I have with him on it has been fantastic. He's an ideal accompanist.
Yeah.
Also, that Saint-Saëns bassoon work, everybody needs to hear that. It's so good. It was a real discovery for me. All right, our final classical album of the night is called Crossing the Bar, and this features Mika Stoltzman on marimba and Richard Stoltzman on clarinet, with Fred Sherry cello, Eddie Gomez on jazz bass, and Steve Gadd on drums. Whoa, what's happening here? Also, members of the Boston Symphony Orchestra and Boston Modern Orchestra Project, you remember them, BMOP, with Stephen Lipset conducting them here. And Miho Hazama also conducts her work. We'll talk about that when we get to it. This is on the Avie label and released on January 23rd. Now, Mika Stoltzman is from the southern Japanese island of Amakusa, and she's now based in Boston, which I guess is why we have the Boston Symphony Orchestra and Boston Modern Orchestra project on the album. And she's married to the clarinetist Richard Stoltzman, who's really well known as well. I have actually several of his recordings in my collection here. Track 1, Johann Sebastian Bach, Chaconne in D minor from Partita No. 2, BWV 1004. Okay, this was arranged for the marimba by Mika Stoltzman, and the string arrangement was made by Stephen Lipset after Mendelssohn's piano accompaniment for this work. Stephen Lipset conducts the orchestra here. Stoltzman begins this arrangement an octave lower than the original composition for violin because she feels the lower octave produced a more compelling resonance. She says that the performance of the chaconne that resonated most for her as a marimba player was Hilary Hahn's because Hahn maintains a fairly steady tempo without rushing or slowing too much, letting the music sing with calm dignity. I always have the experience with Bach's music that when I'm hearing an arrangement for an instrument other than the one the piece was originally composed for, that familiar original version gets temporarily wiped from my mind as I'm listening, and I hear the piece as though for the first time. And in fact, with the solo marimba beginning the piece with its slow, muted hits, the piece sounds like something completely different. The mood is different, though of course the melody is familiar. The strings are in for some tentative, disconnected thematic lines by the 1 minute mark, and the piece then slides into new variations over the bass line. The arrangement is creative, with Stoltzman changing her accompanimental patterns subtly, in a way that's really pleasurable to the ear and mind. Now the marimba is recorded really up close so that the sound of it it sounds like it's dripping onto your eardrum. It's a really nice sound, very kind of present, and affects the body as well as the ear. Now the piece here has a flow to it due to the flowing percussive sense the marimba gives it that the violin version simply doesn't have. It's a comfortable listen, while the violin version doesn't have that quality either. The violin version sounds more dramatic. This is certainly an acceptable approach. It kind of changes the character of the work, but Bach's music is sort of set up for that. The marimba winds up playing a lot of accompaniment in the arrangement, and you heard some of that in the sample that I gave you. But it's got some flowing lines with the theme embedded in it as well. Changes of character are taken impressively smoothly throughout. The marimba will occasionally emerge with some solo sections such as that at around the 6 minute mark. There are some creative uses of stringendo, speeding up the end of a phrase to build tension, but they're quickly released. For a change of pace, at around the 10 minute mark, a solo violin emerges to outline the theme, accompanying the marimba's percussive tracing of that same theme. For the most part, the piece remains unusually calm. At the very end, we hear the theme restated by the strings, punctuated by the marimba. Track 2, contemporary composer John Zorn, his piece Breath Run, Part 1, composed in 2025 for Richard Stoltzman, Mika Stoltzman, and Fred Sherry on cello as well. This trio is referred to by Mika Stoltzman as the palate cleanser placed between Bach and Debussy in the album's first 3 tracks. This starts with the cello providing a low droning chord. The clarinet emerges over that with a melody, with soft percussive patterns from the marimba. This is a calm, though starkly orchestrated piece at the beginning. I've always been attracted to Richard Stoltzman's clarinet tone, and it's on full, rich display here. basically how the piece goes. It remains pretty quiet, which is very unusual for John Zorn's works. This really surprised me. The cello gets some extended techniques in producing his expressive timbres. We heard some of them in that sample. Sherry's playing is on the quiet side throughout, and he's got the wilder, though only mildly wilder, lines. The piece is really divided into sections where first the clarinet and then the cello step out with the theme, always playing quietly as the marimba accompanies. Track 3, Claude Debussy, Reverie. This is the famous piano piece arranged for marimba and strings by Takeshi Fuse. Stephen Lipset conducts the orchestra. So this famous piano piece is opened by solo marimba here, and it comes across gently. Mika Stoltzman has an inviting light touch on the bars. The strings eventually come in with a second theme with the marimba accompanying. Then it moves back to marimba with strings accompanying. Let's hear a little bit of the orchestra in with the marimba. The tempo is pretty slow on this piece and rather hypnotic. Harmonic tension is heard more than felt given the forces used. A sweet-toned solo violin gets the melody at around the 4-minute mark, and then a cello continues, with the marimba always in accompaniment here. The piece ends as calmly as it began. I really love this piece, but I found this arrangement a bit too syrupy for my taste. I would have liked to have heard the marimba play it solo. I think it could have done a pretty good job. Anyway, tracks 4 through 6 are the piece we've been waiting for, really. Miho Hazama's Marimba Concerto No. 1, composed in 2021. This features Richard Stoltzman on clarinet, Eddie Gomez on jazz bass, Steve Gadd on drums, and Steve Gadd is Mika Stoltzman's regular collaborator in jazz settings. And also, Miho Hazama conducts this work. Miho Hazama is from Tokyo, and she's a jazz composer, currently a guest conductor with the Danish Radio Big Band and the Netherlands Metropole Orkest. She's designed the concerto here to highlight Stoltzman's melodically freewheeling jazz eloquence in a powerfully groove-angled setting. If the music sounds improvised by Mika Stoltzman, she says, and this is Stoltzman speaking, "I played drums in my youth and later performed for many years with Steve Gadd. Through that, I've developed quite a highly refined sense of timing and groove, and I think it allows me to play written notes almost as if they were improvised. But everything is fully notated here because the recording was complicated. The drums and bass were recorded separately, and everyone played on the orchestra recording while listening to the drum track." Well, Mika Stoltzman has that ideal sort of sense of groove within like a sort of classical setting that you really want to hear when you get a jazz-inflected work like this, so she's really the ideal person to be playing this. Track 4 is the first movement. The opening features drums and brass in repeating two-note phrases. The marimba is then in for a rather quiet opening statement, also with a light repeated note pulse in one hand. The brass and winds have a theme after this. The piece is genial and very melodic. It grooves pleasantly, too, and that's due to Steve Gadd's presence on the drums. There are occasional jazzy chord changes, but I wouldn't say the movement comes across as jazzy. You can sense that it's heavy on structure. It flows more like a jazzy American songbook tune. I should sample some of the marimba soloing, so let's grab some marimba from around the 3-minute and 30-second mark into this almost 6-minute movement. And you can also hear Richard Stoltzman on clarinet gently melodizing beneath the marimba solo. I like the full sound when the drums step out and we get the bass playing with them at the 5-minute mark too. The jazzy and orchestral elements of this score sound very different as far as the recording goes. This is a pretty laid-back movement. Track 5 is the second movement, and this starts slowly with a marimba theme sounding melodically song-like. The marimba itself is very clearly recorded, with the bass registering nicely in the chest cavity for its brief appearances. At the 1-minute mark, Richard Stoltzman is in with a mournful clarinet theme, and I want to hear this duo play together. Go into an orchestral section after that. There's some really beautiful melodic playing by Mika Stoltzman at around the 2-minute mark, complete with figurative decoration. The orchestra is frequently brass with some winds in the mix. There are light strings too. When they come in, the orchestra has the melody and Mika Stoltzman decorates around them. There's a brief cadenza for the marimba at around the 4-minute mark, occasionally punctuated by orchestral chords. The clarinet is back with the theme at 4 minutes and 45 seconds as the marimba continues with figuration. The movement ends with solo marimba figures. Track 6 is the third and final movement, and this has the jazziest opening of all the three movements. There's a nice groove set by the bass, and I like the marimbas playing in the groove here. Muted trumpets play a theme. The movement has a laid-back big band feel to it with all of the brass lines. There's a looping jazzy clarinet at 1 minute and 50 seconds, followed by assorted winds. The marimba gets an appealing solo at 2 minutes and 20 seconds or so, and the clarinet follows with some rhapsody and blue-like glissandi in its phrasing. Steve Gadd steps up at around the 3 minute and 50 second mark with some well-mic'd fills, and we can't really let this go without sampling him, can we? So let's hear a little bit of that. The marimba and drums are especially present sounding on the recording. At 4 minutes and 30 seconds, clarinet and marimba get a pleasing duet, with the clarinet circling around the marimbas playing. In the 6th minute, a steady rhythm starts up again, and the orchestra plays the opening theme, followed by marimba. The piece ends with some accented chords that simply stop. I was rather surprised at how laid back this album was. The opening Bach Chaconne feels like a pleasant journey through the score, the timbre of the marimba bringing an entirely different feel to the music than the violin does. The John Zorn piece was pretty calm, much more than I thought it would be, and the interaction between Richard and Mika Stoltzman here was charming. A word I never thought I'd use in talking about a John Zorn piece. He clearly has affection for Richard and Mika Stoltzman, for whom he wrote the piece. Fred Sherry on the cello gets to alter his timbre a bit here, but it's a pretty laid-back piece, as is the Reverie by Debussy, though I thought this arrangement was too high in fructose corn syrup for me. Miho Hazama's Marimba Concerto is the main draw here, and it passes pleasantly as well. Mika Stoltzman is given some virtuosic moments, but for the most part, the piece sets a relaxed mood that occasionally livens up and parties. It's great to hear the great Steve Gadd on drums and Eddie Gomez on bass here, two jazz legends. The album is enjoyable all the way through, and the marimba is well caught, registering with great presence throughout its range. Now, Mika Stoltzman states that, in essence, for classical music, I immerse myself in the score, I study it deeply, and I try to perform it with precision. For jazz, I aim for a natural freshness that brings out the vitality and spontaneity of the music and the players. But there's no separation between them for me. I love both genres, and so I simply play the music I love. That makes her an ideal musician to be featured on adult music, because that's our philosophy, absolutely. We both feel the same way.
Yeah, we've often heard marimba on jazz recordings, mostly as an addition to the vibes on recordings by vibraphonists. So hearing a classical recording focused on marimba was interesting. The Bach partita was rather relaxed tempo-wise, I felt.
Yeah.
The close miking gives a full sound on the marimba, and Mika Stoltzman's playing is sensitive to dynamics with subtle orchestral accompaniment. I like the arrangement. The John Zorn piece had a mysterious modal mood, and I really liked the clarinet solo there. And the Debussy seems challenging to pull off with the natural lack of sustain of the marimba, but by being a little bit busier and then using the strings for a lot of support, they pull it off really well. And the Hazama Concerto was enjoyable. I thought it had a lot of pop sentiments to it, but it has a lot of interesting rhythmic change-ups if you listen carefully to what's going on there. And Steve Gadd, of course, pulls those off with flair. And I really enjoyed the marimba and clarinet interaction, husband and wife, on the final movement. I thought that was nice as well.
I like that too, and also in the John Zorn piece.
Yeah.
And I also want to say that if you listen to all of these classical works, the chest cavity gets a good workout this week. I thought that was great.
Good low end,
Good low end on all these recordings.
All right, over on the jazz side, let's start out in France this week with the Pierre de Bethmann Trio. The recording's called Essais, Volume 6 on the Alea label, and this came out on January 23rd. Pierre de Bethmann was born in Paris, France. He began classical piano lessons at age 6, and he soon started playing jazz as well. He continued his musical studies while pursuing a graduate degree in management, and he also studied for 1 year at the Berklee College of Music in Boston in 1989. He worked as a management consultant for 5 years before becoming a full-time musician in 1995.
Usually it goes the other way.
Right. He first co-founded the trio Prism, which recorded 4 albums for Blue Note from 1995 to 2001. He's recorded more than 20 albums as a leader or co-leader with different groups, and he's taught at the Paris National Conservatory of Music and Dance since 2008. He was named Steinway Artist in 2023. The Alea label here is his own, which he created in 2015. De Bethmann has played with jazz names like Eddie Henderson, Dave Liebman, Stefan Belmondo, Stefano Di Battista, just to name a few, and played in other genres, including with singer-songwriter James Taylor. As the title indicates, this is the 6th recording with his trio. However, interestingly, the first 4 recordings were as a standard piano trio with Tony Rabison on drums. And Rabison became unavailable and was replaced by guitarist Nelson Veras for the last volume and this one. And that unique drumless instrumentation was one of the things that made me want to check this out. So the lineup here is Pierre de Bethmann, piano, Nelson Veras, a guitarist from Brazil, Sylvain Romano on the bass. This is an analog recording by Philippe Gaillot at Studio Recall, made on July 27th and 28th, 2022. Mix also by Philippe Gaillot at Studio Recall, and mastering by Raphael Jonin at Studio J. Ralph. The recording is going to start out with an Andrew Hill tune called Snake Hip Waltz. This is from his 1975 quintet recording, Divine Revelation. It's a cute, kind of dizzy-sounding waltz with a 21-measure melody. They take it at a more relaxed tempo than the original. There's a lot of separation in the recording here, with de Bethmann in the right channel handling the melody and Verras in the left with some creative backing ideas. And Romano joins in on the repeat. Let's hear things get started on this recording. And Verras is off on a solo from there. The nylon string tone of his guitar is appealing, and his lines really flow in waves. Let's come back in to hear some of de Bethmann's solo on this one. Yeah, very smooth phrasing. Romano has a bass solo on this tune as well, sounding a bit more rhythmically snappy in his solo with nice melodic ideas. They go around the melody a couple more times, but it stops suddenly at the 15th measure the second time, and I like the relaxed rhythmic approach on this recording already. Track 2 is an Antonio Carlos Jobim tune, Amparo. This is from his 1970 recording, Stone Flower. The original has a free-flowing nature to it, and it seems like a good choice for a drumless lineup. The intro has some guitar improvisations. Romano adds a steady bass pulse. Guitar and piano take the melody in unison, with de Bethmann adding some arpeggiated accompaniment. Let's check it out. De Bethmann solos first, while keeping up his left-hand patterns. Let's hear some of Verras's playing on this one. very fluid playing. De Bethmann is back for some trading with Veras before they sync up on the melody again. Track 3 is Résignation by French pianist Alain Jean-Marie. This is from his Grand Prix Django Reinhardt 79 album. It's a catchy tune with a relaxed groove. The 16-measure melody has some harmonic twists at the end, and then Veras is off on an extended solo. Let's come back to hear some of de Bethmann's playing. Nice playful searching lines. They'll go around the melody again with a little extended ending to finish it up. Track 4, Stella by Starlight by Victor Young, 1945, first recorded by Victor Young and his orchestra, and it's gone on to become a popular jazz standard. They take this very slow, and it sort of drips out, allowing for some nice interaction between the guitar and piano. Let's hear as much of the famous melody as we can in a minute. That's about as far as we'll get in a minute. This mostly features de Bethmann's rippling improvisations. It's kind of hard to capture in a sample, so I'll leave you to check it out in full, and don't miss Veras's ringing harmonics at the end. Track 4, Pensativa. This is a tune by pianist Claire Fischer. That's a male name, C-L-A-R-E. His middle name, his first name was Douglas, and he recorded it with saxophonist Bud Shank in 1962 on Bossa Nova Jazz Samba. This tune is sometimes mentioned as one of the first non-Brazilian Bossa Nova tunes. It was also recorded by Freddie Hubbard. De Bethmann starts it out with a solo 8-measure intro. The melody is kind of an AABA construction with 16 measure sections, so we'll just be able to hear the first part of it. Nice bossa-like chord changes and an airy atmosphere without percussion here. The piano and guitar interplay is subtle. Bethmann solos first with a sense of freedom, and let's hear some of Veras's also free-flowing improvisations on this one. The ending melody section takes on a little darker mood with a different bass line and harmonic idea. Track 6 is Keith Jarrett's Semblance from his 1972 album Facing You. The original is a free-flowing Jarrett exposition based around a 12-measure melody idea, although it's really hard to get a sense of the length of those phrases. We'll hear the theme here in unison on guitar and piano twice with a little interlude between. Then there's a lot of spontaneous interaction. Romano switches up to a walk for a bit before the trading of ideas from de Bethmann and Veras. Let's hear it get started. Let's hear some of the simultaneous improvisations later on in the tune. back to the theme, from there to the ending. Track 7 is a Joni Mitchell tune, Marcie, from her Song to a Seagull album in 1968. Bethmann starts this out with a piano intro, and he and Varas take the melody in unison. It keeps the character of the original, maybe even a bit more rhythmic with the piano chords. Let's hear the melody. And it goes around once again. Romano has a bass solo on this one, so let's check out some of his playing. Bethmann follows with a flowing solo, and I like the little pauses they include before the solos and the final melody section. And the recording finishes up with Benny Golson's Along Came Betty from 1958, which he recorded with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers when he was a member. It's on their self-titled first Blue Note release, although it came to be known as Moanin' after Bobby Timmons' opening track. The original has a laid-back, easy feel for Golson's 34-measure melody, with Lee Morgan up first for a solo. Here, it's a solo piece for de Bethmann, and he gets it going with some motion and sparkle. Before he gets into some more zippy lines in his improvisations, de Bethmann has a section that has a kind of dialogue going between his hands, so let's hear a little bit from the middle of the tune. into some more zippy lines there. And that's the recording. We've heard a few drumless trio recordings. Last year, these two stick in my mind. Table for Three from trumpeter Alex Norris and trumpeter Eric Jacobson's Affinity Trio with New Outlook. In most cases, on those recordings, the bassist really steps up to the plate to keep either the swing feel with walking bass or other rhythmic propulsion with snappy figures. Here they're going for something different. When you don't have the constant subdivision of a drummer or the constant ringing of a ride cymbal, you have a freer rhythmic and sonic space, and that's the focus here. There are more rhythmic passages, but overall the program explores how songs and improvisations can flow in a relaxed presentation. That seems to suit the improvisation style of both de Bethmann and Verras, who both have exploring lines with liquid phrasing. There's a lot of interplay and also improvised accompaniment that's enjoyable too. Sylvain Romano's bass anchors things just enough, sometimes with just a downbeat or sparse figures. His solos have an appealing warm tone and melodic sense, and the program is well suited for this approach and rather unique. One standard, some originals by jazz greats that we don't hear covered too often, and even a Joni Mitchell tune. It's a recording that will carry you along with the current of the music.
Yeah, I could tell right away, by the way, that Nelson Verras was Brazilian. You give a Brazilian a guitar, and they just really make
Yeah.
magic happen. I don't know what that is. That kind of makes me wish I were Brazilian so I could do that. Anyway, this isn't the type of trio where there's basically one solo instrument and the rhythm section. Nelson Verras on guitar and Pierre de Bethmann on piano both play melodically and thematically throughout and interact in such a way that the sound becomes incredibly rich, both in timbre and detail. I like the way the guitar in the left channel and piano in the right blended together, yet because of the mix, they're easily separable from each other. So that made the album for me really much more enjoyable to listen to. There's a lot of detail to listen to and enjoy. Both the guitar and piano, both Verras and Bethmann, will solo at the same time on occasion, and they seem to understand each other well. Though their solos don't interlock, they still wind up being more than the sum of their parts. It's really kind of miraculous. Sylvain Romano is often in the role of timekeeper. He's a solid anchor, allowing both Verras and Bethmann to go off on separate flights of fancy, though Romano does get a few solos as well, where he uses the entire bass palette in an understated way, even in the solos. The tracks all range between a slow to mid-tempo, making the rhythm relax while the harmony and patterns aren't always like that. It's an album with great creativity in the soloing, and the overall sound and feel of the album is fantastic.
Yeah, analog recording too.
Yeah, really great. And the balance, too, between the guitar and piano, like having them, they're not completely in separate channels, but they're separate enough that you can kind of get an idea of where they are. It was really good. I really just enjoyed this a lot.
Yeah, interesting recording. All right, next up we've got Tomasz Zyrmont and his quartet with London Manifest on the Polish Soliton label. This came out on January 22nd. Tomasz Zyrmont is a Polish pianist and composer living in London. He's become known there for playing at events such as the London Jazz Festival, Yamaha Music Live, Wigmore Lates, Jazz FM Discovery Show, and many others, as well as playing in leading London jazz clubs such as Ronnie Scott's 606 Club or Boysdale of Canary Wharf. He's a graduate of the Academy of Music Karol Szymanowski in Katowice and Guildhall School of Music and Drama in London. He's performed in the UK, Poland, Germany, France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the United States. In 2025, he received the honorary badge Meritorious for Polish Culture, awarded by the Minister of Culture and National Heritage in recognition of his significant contribution to the promotion of Polish culture abroad. So on this recording, Tomasz Zyrmont on piano and all compositions except for one tune by Miles Davis and one by Herbie Hancock, Sean Kahn on the alto saxophone, Ben Hazelton on bass, and Filippo Galli on drums. This was recorded by Ivan Williams at West London University Studios, assistant sound engineer Kostas Martinkinas. Mixing and mastering by Arkadiusz Nowacki at Lord Fader's studio. The recording starts out with a tune called Take the Lift. This one has an interesting AABA structure. The A sections are 10 measures with 5-measure phrases over a heavy rock-like beat, and the B section switches up to swing feel over walking bass for 15 measures. Kahn's alto is in the lead, sometimes doubled by Zyrmont. Let's hear how this recording gets going. Zyrmont's up on a solo from there, so let's come back in and hear some more of his playing once he's got it worked up, with some nice bluesy licks thrown in as well. And they use that ending of the B section as a transition to an alto sax solo from Kahn, who gets both straight beat sections and swing to blow over. He has a full tone and nice intensity, and the tune finishes up with a B section and 2 times through the A section of the melody. Track 2 is Jagoda Interlude. This is a short solo piece before the Jagoda tune. I'll play just the ending of this, where he gets to some more flourishes and rippling lines. Track 3 is Jagoda. This seems to be in a 6/8 meter with an interesting ostinato figure in the 8-measure intro that will return later under the solos. The melody's long with sections of unusual phrase lengths like 9, 13, and 7 measures. Let's hear as much of it as we can in a minute. check out some of Kahn's sax solo on this one. Comes down quietly for a lyrical bowed bass section from Hazelton before a solo from Zyrmont that works into chiming chords, and the ending returns to the intro idea and then an abbreviated melody section. Track 4 is a Hidden Toys. This one starts with an 8-measure drum opening. It's a modal tune with some cool change-ups. The main melody section is 16 measures over a Latin beat. That goes around twice. Next is a 16-measure swing feel section without sax over walking bass. Then a little rubato transition leads to once more through the first section. To the first section there. Kahn is up first for an intense alto solo. The rhythmic push dissipates for a flowing start to Zyrmont's piano solo. That then changes up to a loping swing and then takes off again with some nice bass work from Hazelton. Let's check out some of that transition. Yeah, exciting stuff there, and there's more to come with a percussive chord climax. It finishes up with a couple times through the main melody section with final phrase repeats. Track 5 is Nostalgia. This is a trio tune, so no sax. Zyrmont starts it out solo in ballad fashion. Once he gets into improvisations, it gets a new energetic push, and that's where I'll sample from about a minute and a half in. After the climax of that section, it comes down with rubato solo piano to a long hold. Bass and drums return gently to the ending. Well, don't get too nostalgic from that last tune, because this next one, Line Breaker, will shake up your brain. I'm not sure how you would write the meter for this one. The opening tricky lined sections seem to be in a 14-beat phrase. There's two phrases with kind of question and answer like different endings. That goes around twice, and then there's another section that sounds like it has 16 beats that goes around twice. And then that whole idea repeats, and then it works into a funky 4/4 section, and then a mellow section of legato sax lines. Let's check this out. Khan is up first for a sax solo that switches up between funky and mellow feels, and Zyrmont solo's next, mixing smooth and funky feelings too. Let's hear a little bit of his playing. And once more through that first section finishes up the tune. Track 7 is Miles Davis's Narcisse, written for Cannonball Adderley's 1958 recording Portrait of Cannonball that Davis didn't play on. The trumpeter there was Blue Mitchell. Bill Evans was on that recording, and this tune went on to become one that he often performed. They've reimagined it rhythmically here with a single-hit bass and piano chord idea that starts from the intro. The sparse atmosphere matches well with the melody that uses the Phrygian dominant scale and the double harmonic scale. Let's check this out. Zyrmont solos first, making nice use of some of those more exotic scales in his ideas with a cool heavy groove from Gali on the drums. Hazelton has a bass solo on this tune, so it's a good chance to check out some of his playing. Back to the melody from there. Track 8 is back to Zyrmont's original compositions, Awakened Desires. This is a solo piano piece of about 3.5 minutes that changes up a lot on the way. The beginning and ending section have a lot of moving chords, then it gets rhythmic and then contemplative. Let's hear it get started. Another new idea starts up from there, which works into a more modal improvisation section. Track 9 is Blues Sus. A nice groove on this one, starting out with the 8-measure intro. The melody has a blues-like progression, but it's a 16-measure form around twice. Khan is up first for an alto sax solo, so let's check out some more of his playing on this tune. And Zyrmont has a fun solo on this one too, with lots of funky feel and bluesy excitement. Before the final melody section, there's a vamp for Gali to build up a lot of excitement around the drum kit as well. And the recording ends up with Herbie Hancock's One Finger Snap from the 1964 Empyrean Isles album. The original had a fabulous solo from trumpeter Freddie Hubbard on it. The tune has a neat 4-measure intro that's used as the top of the chorus as well. Here, after Kahn's melody, Zyrmont is off on a solo. Let's hear it get started. And Kahn gets a solo on this one as well, but things wrap up quickly at just 3 minutes to finish up the album. Tomasz Zyrmont puts in a fine performance as a pianist and composer on London Manifest. He's got great technique and sounds at home swinging hard or on modern straight beat tunes, as well as making rich chord textures and using a soft touch on ballads. The program showcases his originals, which have unique structures and a lot of rhythmic variety, also balancing excitement and introspection. It was a fun challenge trying to figure out his tunes. Miles Davis's Narcisse also gets reimagined in a new rhythmic way. Sean Kahn's alto sax tone sounds full and pleasing, and he takes charge of a lot of the melodies, and his solos are adventurous and creative. Excellent bass work from Ben Hazelton with some cool switch-ups in patterns and feels where the tunes change gears, and he has a couple solo spots and some bow work as well. And Filippo Galli rounds things out with flexible drumming from subtle to explosive. It's a recording with traditional grounding and modern creativity all in one.
Yeah, I found the playing on this album to be highly expressive, and that's really not a word I use much when I'm talking about jazz. I'll usually use it in the classical albums. I thought Tomasz Zyrmont had a wintry sort of tone and approach in his playing on the slower tracks. And I found him to be working with shades of the whiter, wintrier side of the spectrum in his instrument. He's not always like that, of course. He comes up with a lot of soulful chords, like, for example, in Narcisse during his solo, and elsewhere as well, especially at the end, like when the tracks start swinging harder. Listen to his intro to Nostalgia. It's really slow and really kind of moody, and it has a kind of wintry sort of feel to me. Examples of his more blues-inflected swinging style can be heard in the later tracks, like Blue Sus and One Finger Snap. Some of the structures were surprising, like the one in Hidden Toys, with its surprise changes in rhythm pattern. You mentioned counting and how hard they were to count. Yeah. It was kind of interesting just to listen. Perhaps those changes in the rhythm represent the finding of the toys, I thought. I was kind of trying to imagine a sort of storyline going along with this track. It gave me a lift, that particular track. I liked it. There are also the constant fast to slow to fast rhythm changes in Line Breaker and the rising key changes in Yagoda. There's lots to keep the musical ear engaged here, and the timekeeping sense as well. Sean Kahn is Tomasz Zyrmont's foil here, playing with an often breathy tone, which is always appealing to me, and producing attractive legato lines in many of his solos, though he varies these as well. It's interesting how Filippo Galli on drums completely changes the mood of the track when it started without him, and then he suddenly comes in, and it's like a completely different feel. Yeah. This really fascinated me. He's a hard-hitting drummer that nevertheless remains in service of the rhythm for most of the album. Ben Hazelton took different approaches for his solos, and I feel like he had a lot more in him if he had been given more soloing time. He does have a deep tone in the lower end that anchored the tracks solidly, and the album to me had a bit of a roller coaster quality to it, making you wonder what's around each turn. It's well recorded, too, and a very interesting listen.
Yeah, there's a lot of change-ups and constantly catches your attention as it goes along. I enjoy it. All right, and we've got one more exciting one to finish up the episode this time.
And one that really sums up the entire episode, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In its title, anyway.
Fireball.
Yeah.
From John Ellis and Double Wide on Sunnyside Records. This came out January 23rd. A native of North Carolina, John Ellis learned clarinet and piano as a child. He was the second-place winner of the Thelonious Monk saxophone competition in 2002. He's been on the New York jazz scene with more than 150 album credits as a sideman and close to 20 albums as a leader now. 3 of those before this one also featuring his New Orleans-centered band Double Wide. There was Dance Like There's No Tomorrow from 2008, Puppet Mischief in 2010, and Charm in 2015. The membership has changed up until settling into the current lineup, who's on this recording. No recording date is given in the notes, but the Bandcamp notes state Double Wide did take the opportunity to spend extended time at Brooklyn recording after a rare appearance at the Lake George Jazz Festival in 2019. Ellis used 3 days to allow the band to take their time and experiment in the studio, ironing out Ellis's original material there. So was it recorded at that time, like 6 years ago? I don't know. We last heard John Ellis back in episode 148, Splashes of Spain, back in January of 2024 on his recording Bizet, Carmen in Jazz. That was on Blue Room Records, and we enjoyed that one as a nice kind of crossover between classical and jazz.
Yeah.
The lineup here with Double Wide, John Ellis on tenor and soprano sax, clarinet, bass clarinet, and all the compositions are his originals. Alan Ferber on the trombone, Matt Perrine on the sousaphone. He's a New Orleans native, and the sousaphone is the big one that wraps around the body, making it suitable for marching. It has a bigger, more forward-facing bell. The tuba points up, so you get some real projection with it. Gary Versace, a pianist who we like, here on upright piano, organ, accordion, Fender Rhodes, and Wurlitzer. Jason Marsalis on drums and whistling, and Rogerio Boccato on percussion on track 4. The recording starts out with Wash Your Mouth Out. The melody sounds like 30 measures with a repeating A section, but the main riff started by Ellis gets passed around the horns in a fun arrangement. Perrine's pulsing sousaphone bass is great. Let's hear this album get going. I know you want to hear the sousaphone solo, so let's just keep right on listening. really gets around on that big horn. Ellis and Ferber trade lines from there, working to simultaneous improvisations. There are some fun breaks for Versace to get in some piano too before the final melody section. Track 2 is Top Down, a change of mood for this one, a relaxed Latin beat and Rhodes from Versace. Ellis is in on clarinet for the 24-measure melody that comes after a 4-measure intro, which also works as a transition to the clarinet solo. Nice harmony lines from Ferber's trombone here. Great arranging. Let's come back and hear some of Ellis's clarinet solo. Versace has a Rhodes solo with a lazy, relaxed feel to it. Ellis is back with melody lines, but Versace gets to continue on with his improvisations right to the end that has long legato horn lines. Track 3 is Clown Car. This is circusy and entertaining with the great sousaphone bass line and clownish trombone glisses. Ellis is on soprano sax here. After the first section repeats, it seems to change up to a 3/4 feel for 4 measures, and then Ferber is off on a trombone solo with some growls. Let's check out some of Ellis's soprano solo here, which starts out over Versace's piano. It's an upright piano here, which has just the right tone for the mood. Track 4 is The Whistler, and the whistler is Jason Marsalis, who whistles the melody here as well as providing the drum beat that has both Brazilian and New Orleans elements. I'm not sure of the meter here, but I found myself counting it in 2, like cut time. Counted like that, the melody is in an AAB shape, and I got 29, 29, and 28 measure sections. The perky whistled melody is over a legato horn arrangement. Section there, and the notes say that Marsalis learned Versace's piano solo for the tune, and he doubles him for an interesting effect, while Versace also adds organ lines in. Let's hear a little bit of that as well. There's a little horn section interlude before it ends up with the final A section of the melody that ends on a high whistled note. I wonder if he had to take a lot of breaks to get the whole tune recorded. That's a lot of whistling.
Yeah, that sounded pretty, superhuman, really.
Yeah, amazing. Track 5 is the title track, Fireball. This one has Ellis on soprano sax, Versace on accordion, and Ferber having some fun with wah-wahs on an arrangement with super tricky rhythms. This one's a lot of fun. Now, I know you want to hear Gary Versace's Out There accordion solo, so let's keep on listening to some of this. Keeps on going some more with a more ominous section of trombone growls and accordion chords coming up. Soprano sax swirls in as it stretches to a drum reset to a final short melody section. Track 6 is Crocodile Tears. This one's a waltzing ballad. Ellis is on bass clarinet at the start, and Versace plays organ and electric piano for an interesting blend of sounds. Let's hear it get started. Switches to tenor sax later for a melodic section, and there's just a little bit more left after that, with the whole tune ending in less than 3 minutes. Track 7 is Meat Pie. This one is raucous with sousaphone blasts and tenor sax and trombone working the slinky melody lines. It's a 24-measure idea, and then a little 4-measure interlude comes before Ferber's off on a trombone solo. Are you going to get organ and sousaphone together?
Yeah, and that bass line is fantastic too. Da 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 da. It's great.
Let's keep listening to some of Ferber's solo. Ellis follows on tenor sax. Marsalis gets a drum solo that sets up the horns to come back in with the melody, and it goes out with just drums and sousaphone. And the recording ends up with From the Ashes, the notes say that for this tune, Marsalis created a loop on drums that the other instruments played over. The drums were then removed, and Marsalis played loosely over the instrumental track to create the free-sounding piece. It's quite different, with flowing lines including the bass clarinet. After a long pause, it gets restarted with Versace joining in and some new staccato trombone backing ideas. I guess there are multiple tracks here since we hear both Ellis's clarinet and bass clarinet. There are a lot of new developments and interaction of instrumental lines. It's a continuous flow and rather hard to pick somewhere to start a sample from, so I'll leave you to check out the whole thing on your own. It sort of approaches a spiritual jazz atmosphere. And that's the recording. Fireball is just 37 minutes long, but it's packed full of interesting ideas, unique instrumentation, and surprising arrangements. Beyond the musical details, it's really just a lot of fun to listen to. All the music is built over Matt Perring's powerful sousaphone bass lines that puts a unique sonic stamp on everything. There's a New Orleans spice throughout, but that's just part of the recipe, with Latin feels, waltzes, and circus fun mixed in. The tonal variety for a quintet often makes you think you're listening to a larger ensemble, with Ellis on clarinet, bass clarinet, and tenor sax and soprano sax, and Versace on piano, electric pianos, organ, and even accordion. Alan Ferber's trombone playing is great, and don't forget the drumming and whistling talents of Jason Marsalis. Everyone has engaging solo spots, but this recording is all about the ensemble interaction and creative arranging to use all of these sounds in unique ways together.
Yeah, I said this was a fun album, too, and it's even goofy at times.
Yeah, that's what's great about it.
Yeah, it's really fun to listen to. There are a lot of traditionally popular music elements on the album, not least in its dance rhythm quality. A lot of these songs have kind of like a happy sort of dance feel to them. And for me, the use of the sousaphone was an immediate draw. It's a staple of New Orleans bands in the early jazz era, and the instrument isn't heard often enough today as far as I'm concerned. Though it seems to be making a comeback. There are a few, I guess, euphoniumists out there, if not sousaphonists. Or just say sousaphonists. I don't know how they would say that.
Sousaphonists? I don't know.
I don't know. Matt Perrin has enough of a sense of humor to go along with his lung power to make the instrument's appearances throughout the album entertaining and very satisfying in the low end. I think the tubist has to be a bit of a comedian in jazz, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe this is a serious way to play it.
Maybe it doesn't have to be, but I like it.
Yeah, it just kind of lifts the mood, I think. John Ellis's abilities with all four of the instruments he plays made for some of interesting timbral qualities, and I especially liked hearing the sensitivity he brought to his clarinet lines, being a big fan of the reeds and the jazz clarinet in general, and the clarinet in general, really. Likewise, with Gary Versace on the many keyboard instruments he plays, including the accordion, he actually brings a magical quality to his Fender Rhodes sound on the final track, From the Ashes. There were great timbral combinations among the brass on tracks like Crocodile Tears, but I have to say the very high-frequency whistling by Jason Marsalis on the Whistler kind of irritated me, even though it was really impressive. I mean, it was impressive that he did it, but I didn't really need to hear it, I don't think. I did like the way he picked up sudden energy like a sprinter on his last lap when he transitioned from rhythm to solo. This is a record that recalls the early era of jazz, and I'm really tempted to get this just because it has a sousaphone on it playing the bass.
And the arranging is just a lot of fun, too. So.
Yeah.
All right. I don't think we've had this interesting combination of instruments in one episode in quite a while. What do we have in here? Early trombone, bassoon, marimba, sousaphone. It's all in there. Accordion.
We better come up with a good episode title for this one.
Better.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for episode 245. As always, we want to say thanks to Fast Signs of Staten Island for our glowing neon logo. And we've already got a program picked for next week. So what's on the classical menu, Mike?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing these, actually. This is the Baroque recording will be Barbara Strozzi, Virtuosissima Sirena.
Oh.
Okay, virtuosity siren, so she could sing as well. That's with Laura Catrani on soprano, Accademia dell'Annunziata. Riccardo Doni is their musical director. That's on the Arcana label. Then we have a lot of cello, really. I'm sure you'll enjoy this episode because I know you like the cello. Stephen Isserlis and Connie Shi on the piano, playing 1851 sonatas by Robert Schumann and Ignaz Moscheles. You always have to have that rarity on there to make it really interesting. And actually, the Schumann cello sonata is pretty rare as well. Actually, they're playing the violin sonata on the cello. It's an arrangement. And the contemporary album is called Beyond the Pacific, and it features 3 contemporary American composers and their piano trios. I'm curious to hear what the contemporary American piano trio sounds like. I haven't heard this record yet, so we'll see.
All right, over on the jazz side, we're going to hear the latest from Antonio Martino's AMA records with the Max Kochetov Quartet. I think he plays exclusively soprano saxophone on this recording. He's a Ukrainian saxophonist who's now active in Serbia. The recording is called Foolin' Myself, and it's got a couple giant trumpet guests on it in Alex Sipiagin and Fabrizio Bosso. So that's going to be fun to listen to. We're going to check out the latest from Ramiro Zayas, pianist, with his Familia that features his first time arranging for a large ensemble. This is featuring the Basel Jazz Orchestra, and we heard his previous recording last year, Collector. Check out his arranging for a larger group. And finally, we're going to get some vibraphone from Wolfgang Lackerschmidt with Bayer Baio, featuring the Brazilian trio with him. This just came out on Friday on Hip Jazz. Can't find any notes or information about it online yet, but maybe I'll write to Wolfgang and see if he can send me the credit notes. So I have a little bit of everything on the jazz side as well. I'll have all these recordings, classical and jazz, up on our Deezer playlist a few hours after this episode is published if you want to get listening to the music during the week, along with Mike and I. Any final thoughts to sign off with for this episode, Mike?
Well, I'm kind of disappointed it's over because I really liked hearing all these odd instruments that you usually don't hear.
Yeah.
Let's have more of that, people listening. If you're a musician, put a record out with your strange instrument. I want to hear it.
Yeah. Variety is the spice, as they say.
Yeah.
All right, then. We'll be back again next week with episode 246. So until then, keep listening, and we'll see you again next time.